Intrinsic drivers, we need to ask those questions, not just from what we think we know should be true. A lot of our shoulds live here, right? But what does our heart actually want, right? Or maybe I wake up in the morning as a business owner and I'm like feeling guilty that I need to grind, but I haven't examined in the heart where that guilt is actually coming from. Maybe that guilt is old, maybe that guilt is misplaced.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of The Freedom Experience. I'm your host, Jean Moncrief, and my guest today, now I'm going to try and get this right, is Marina Suholutsky. Not going to lie, it took me a few tries to get that pronunciation right, but trust me, you're going to want to remember her name. Now, Marina is a former IBM executive who walked away from the corporate world. She was managing 200 million in revenue or 200 million revenue stream and had a 10 million team. And she walked away from that to start something a lot more personal. The business that she now runs is called Purpose Built. It's a company that works with high achievers, helping them navigate the major life and leadership transitions that we go through. And that could be anything from leaving a lifelong corporate career like Marina did, to exiting the military, or to selling a business, to realizing you've built something successful, but it's no longer fulfilling, and kind of wondering like, what now? So Marina works with you through those transitions in your life. And this isn't a conversation about business strategy or productivity hacks. It's about the inner shifts that often need to happen when we hit a plateau, and how we reconnect with that part of ourselves that kind of got buried under the hustle, I guess. So in this episode, we talk about why your business only grows as much as you grow, and the importance of growing with your business, and how if you're not doing that, your business is going to stall out. We also talk about how your body, not your brain, often tells you the truth when it comes to burnout and misalignment. And then we get into this idea that trauma, even the quiet kind, can silently shape how you lead and limit what you believe is possible. So if you're in a season of change, or you feel like something in your business or life just isn't quite clicking anymore, this is one of those episodes that's worth slowing down for. Let's get into it with Marina. Marina, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on today, and I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I think just like to frame things up, and we were talking before we hit the record button, as business owners, we often hit this plateau, and we struggle to kind of break through that plateau, and often it's about letting go and things like that. So I've been really interested in the mindset that business owners need to have to kind of escape where they find themselves getting stuck and trying to go it alone. And I know we'll get into that, but maybe just to sort of where we're going to go with this conversation. Then Marina, I know you worked for IBM for a while. Can you just give us a bit of background about you and how you landed up where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. So, it's interesting because I enjoyed IBM. I enjoyed corporate. I never really got too much on the like poo-poo train, It served me well. And what served me well is ultimately what I'm doing now, just at a greater capacity. But I was managing teams really early on. And the second I started managing humans, I recognized, okay, this is actually the part that I want to be doing more of. Concurrently, I got really bored, right? Like there
Okay.
wasn't anything wrong. I actually loved my team. I made it like I checked all the boxes. I made it to executive from like entry level analyst, right, at IBM, which means you have to learn how to play in that world.
Yeah.
And I did that because I liked humans. And so I was able to navigate humans. But I realized at a point that just was not actually compelling enough alongside the work. So I could be with good people, and make the best of it, but I wasn't actually excited anymore. Like there's only so many products you can put into market
Yeah.
as a digital agency firm, in-house, whatever, until you're like, yeah, I just want to do more of the thing I love more of the time,
Which is working with humans, right?
just working with humans. Like you'll hear me say at some point today, our biggest message is that we are purposeful humans, Like the
Okay.
full extent of who we are is what everybody's craving. What is the most authentic expression of you as a human, me as a human, right? And we'll get into that as we go towards limiting beliefs. And so I had always kind of known I'd work with humans in some way, and I always wanted to do something on my own. My mom used to always tell me, always work for yourself. She had a boss when she was like in her early 40s who didn't let her go on a vacation with us. Like he didn't let her take me on vacation. And
So
so
I basically had to stay at work, couldn't go take that time off as a family.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, on this trip to Virginia Beach, and that ever since then she was like, you have to work for yourself at some point.
Okay.
Long story short, March 2020, I quit IBM. It was like March 9th or something. And the world went into hibernation like that week.
That's right. It was like right there.
The beginning of COVID. I mean, you couldn't make it up. I had started a company called Purpose Built, and then like the world goes into hibernation, and they call me up and they're like, "Do you want to stay? Like, we don't have anyone to transfer your team. Like, do you want to just stay for a while?" And I had this choice point moment. I knew I was bored. I knew there was more. I wasn't quite at the place I ultimately wanted to be. I also didn't know if I was supposed to like take care of my parents or my 93-year-old grandfather, like I didn't know what was going to happen. And I had this trust fall moment. I literally fell onto a bed and I was like, I can't start a company called Purpose Built and stay a lifer. It was this like, I think if I stay, I'll stay there forever. And so I quit and I said, hey, I'm not going to stay, but if you want to become my first client and you want to like use me to transition the team, because that's a lot of what we do is we focus on transition points within the business, within Purpose Built. And so they became my first client ultimately.
You stepped into your fear there because we're going into COVID. As you said, you're thinking about your family,
It was.
and you basically had to make that decision. Do I kind of embrace this thing wholeheartedly and step away from what I'm doing because I can't this you can't kind of have one leg on one side and one leg on the other. It's actually I have to have faith, let go, and it's often when you do that that you actually end up getting what you want, I guess.
Yeah, that's the first letting go moment. It's why I sort of told the longer version of that story. But yeah, I had this literal trust fall. I was like, do I stay or do I actually do the thing I said I was going to do? And it's so interesting because so many businesses were started at that time. I know I have a lot of friends whose businesses are turning 5 this year, just like we are, and it's been fascinating to see what happens when you do the thing you say you're going to do.
Yeah. And really just kind of wrap your arms around and go all in and do it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of fear involved in that, but yeah.
For sure.
So you finish up at IBM, you start a new business, it's 2020. What's your core focus? I mean, you talked about transitions. I'm really curious, Marina, about the kind of work that you do, and for the audience to understand the kind of work that you do, because I know you work with everybody from, I guess, business owners to Navy SEALs, and yeah, those are some of the toughest people in the world.
Yeah, I have some very good friends that have come out of that experience for sure. You know, the position of the business is very simple. It's that your business only grows to the extent that you grow,
Yes.
right? And so call it somebody who's left service after many, many years, or somebody who's left corporate after many, many years, or somebody who's sold a business, whatever it might be. Even somebody who's just kind of bored, like I was, there is something that is creating a plateau essentially, right?
Yeah.
There's just a level you can't grow beyond. And if you've, looked at any work around personal development within business in particular, there's an identity shift that's required, right?
Yeah.
So there's a version of yourself that you become. I became an entrepreneur that day, right? When I fell on the bed, I actually fully became an entrepreneur, as terrified as I was. And so that's what we focus on. It's where is that moment for you? When I say transition, it's the physical moment in time, but it's also an inner transition that says, okay, who am I becoming? What am I stepping into? Because ultimately I know there's more for me here than what I'm currently doing.
Yeah, and again, before we hit the record button, we were talking about some of those transition moments for entrepreneurs and hitting that plateau. So, whether it's somebody starting the business, getting it to a particular revenue point, and it just kind of ceilings out there. Somebody else comes in, takes over the leadership role, and the business grows dramatically. And we've seen that kind of in the small giants environment with Elizabeth and Connie and some of the great speakers we've had. Uh, Tom, thinking about him, where two of the employees come into Tom Walter, Tasty Catering, and say to him, Tom, unless you change, we're gone. So there's
He's
this,
so rad, by the way.
he's brilliant, isn't he?
Rad. Yeah, that's exactly
But to bring the context, that's what we're talking about here. It's, as business owners, we get to this point, and I think your point on growth is so important as well, because if we're not growing at the same pace as the business, we're going to plateau. And if we aren't open to growth and don't have open minds, we're going to just hit that plateau. And then it's, you kind of go up that S curve, and whatever that number is that you get to, size or whatever, you either kind of flatten out there and figure it out and go up, or, and
yeah,
that's what's happening.
yeah, for sure. And the business is a direct reflection of your growth path.
Yeah.
Some people believe that, some people don't. Some people think that's a little bit of a spiritual comment, right? But if you are only able to show up a certain way, then your business is getting that version of you, right?
Oh, that is such an amazing way of looking at it. So basically, when as a business owner, if you're looking at your business and you think, I'm not happy with where I'm at, I'm not happy with the growth, it's a reflection of where you are in terms of, I love that.
Mirror,
Yeah.
mirror. If there's I was just talking about this
Jeez.
with my partner last night. He was talking about a personal life experience, but there was a person who owned a firm, a law firm, and they were constantly fighting, and they were constantly, like, when you walked into that environment, it was a hostile environment for what it's worth, right? And if
Yeah.
you looked at the owner of the business, that was a person who was constantly frustrated, who always picked a fight, who couldn't quite get like to satisfaction, was always dissatisfied. And it shows in the business, because that's what you're putting out there. You're modeling. As leaders, we model,
Yeah.
right? We either model how tired we are, how frustrated we are, how uh, sort of confused or stressed we are, or we model that we hold vision and that we have faith and that we move into the future by solving problems. Whatever we're internally experiencing and kind of working through, we're modeling to the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, if you're looking at your team and saying, I might as well do this myself, it's basically kind of a reflection of how you are running things. It's,
Oh, yeah, doing it alone is I don't know, maybe a top three, of sort of entrepreneurial mindset plateaus, I would say.
yeah.
Another really big one is a constant state of overwhelm. Like, there's just too much going on. There's just too much. It's too much. That's another big one when there's a lot of change going on. So there are a few, but doing it alone is pretty ubiquitous, I would say, from what I've gained.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a combination of them sometimes as well. Like, I don't know, I feel like both of those I've landed up being there myself, and probably at the same time as well. So,
Yeah, and may I just say one more thing? I think it might be interesting for the audience, because you brought up Navy SEALs.
yeah,
It's really interesting because cultural context, the way we grow up, really matters, which I spoke a lot about at Small Giants. One of the things I've experienced with people who have come out of service is they are team based.
yes,
It's the team where, it's not about me, it's about the team. And so that has been something where stepping into something individual is actually really challenging. It's the opposite of I need to do it alone. It's like I don't matter. The team matters more than I matter.
yeah,
So I'm bringing that up because, there are people in different cultural contexts where they kind of put themselves on the back burner, right?
yeah,
And then there are other people who are in American individualism, entrepreneurial spirit. I have to do it all myself. And so recognizing where you fall in that so that you know what to evolve out of. is
Yeah, I might be generalizing, but you make a good point there. With if you come from a environment, Marina, where you've been playing in a team, like with sports team service, I
yeah,
even have noticed in some of the clients I've worked with and coached where there's a strong kind of faith-based element to the
sure.
business. There's far more like vision, team values, those kind of things are the softer
Yes.
edge maybe is just there naturally. So I mean, I noticed it stepping into this leadership role with Small Giants, even with the small but mighty team that we have. Bridget, Heidi, and Katie are just phenomenal and are so cohesive and so like we're focused on this community and that picture, which is just really refreshing to come in and work with a team like that. So
Yeah, and congratulations. I don't know where in the recording cycle you are, who's gotten to congratulate you first. Like, congratulations.
thanks very much. What, but let's go back to this transition point. Like, I mean, you work with all these different people. How do, as a business owner, somebody listening to this, when are they starting to reach out to you and say, "I need help"? Or is that how it happens?
Mm.
How how is how am I kind of registering that this is something I need some help with?
Usually, it's not the languaging that you would find on the website that brings somebody to the work, right? It's usually some kind of pain point that just starts to grate on you a little bit too much, right? There's like a I'm bored, I'm annoyed, I built this business, I don't like it anymore, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
right? That's thing one version of events. The other version is a little bit more silent, kind of personal gnawing. Like, I know I'm meant to do something more, and I'm just getting perpetually less happy doing what I'm doing because it doesn't feel like my highest expression.
mm,
Right? So it's either something in the business that's creating a pain point. That's the first version of what I was sharing, or there's something inside of you. And either way, again, the business only grows to the extent that you grow. So chicken or the egg, it doesn't really matter where you start, but it's recognizing that there is a friction or a pain point, and then going, who's got the tools I don't have? You know,
yeah,
most people we work with, and I recognize this probably in year one, most of the people we work with are um, masterful in their own right, right? They're really good at what they do. And so they can recognize, okay, I would know how to solve this problem in my industry, but I don't have the tools to solve it in this growth phase. So who
gotcha.
has the tools, right? But it's some kind of friction or grading point, either in the business or within themselves.
But I think some of us can kind of deal with that grading point or that friction for so long that it almost gets to, I mean, we see it gets to burnout, breakdown, whatever it is, that just we do not kind of see the signs or I don't know, it's just that grit that like I'm gonna just keep going, keep going,
Yeah.
keep going, and we just don't
Yeah.
recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I shared an example in the talk I gave about Dan Harris. Do you know the
Yeah.
example who had a panic attack on live
Yes. 10%
and
what?
happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he found meditation. He found the ability to pause, or the need to pause, right, in a way that wasn't just like a checkbox on his, like,
Yeah.
entrepreneurial morning routine agenda or whatever. But he found it because it got loud. It got really, really loud. And so not everybody has to have a panic attack, but one way that people tend to get there is their body starts talking to them, right?
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
go
And you
ahead.
got to listen to your body, right? Like it's telling you something, I
Yeah,
guess.
and
And
just forget that they're humans.
yeah.
That's why we always say you're a full human. You have a body, you have the need for food, sleep, the basic necessities. You're not immune to the basic necessities. Um, that's definitely the sort of the loudest volume way that people can hear. The other thing that most people don't know to do is to actually stop and go, okay, the reason I started here, whether it's within my business or maybe I took a position, right? The reason that I started is not actually the same reason that I have now.
Mm.
It's so, again, pausing. Like we write a newsletter, a bi-monthly newsletter called The Pause for entrepreneurs, because it's like the thing that most people don't know how to do. Pausing to stop and go, is this actually the same thing that matters to me, that mattered to me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago? Or do I
Yeah.
have different things that matter to me? And when you start asking those questions, we call those intrinsic drivers. What are the things that are intrinsic, means from the inside? What are the things from the inside that are moving me, right? Most people don't know that those things can actually shift over time. They don't know to ask.
And it's only when you look back, right, and you look at the crumbs that you realize that those things have shifted.
Yeah.
You know, I was asked a question the other day about what would I've done differently back then, and if I think back to when I owned businesses sort of 20 odd years ago, it was revenue, profit, chase the numbers, 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20 million, build it as big as I could. It was, that was all that it was about. If I look back at that now, I would do everything completely differently. It's more about people and community and all those things. But what you're suggesting, and I think this was something that, going to your four directions model, you
Mhm.
had the heart, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I remember you talking
Yeah.
about kind of the spirit and slowing down.
Yeah.
And we come from this kind of these H words like hustle and hyper and just go, go, go. And it's like, you got your F words and you got your H words, and we don't slow down. And I
Right.
think I'd love, I mean, I really enjoyed kind of
Yeah.
hearing about that model, but I feel like, if you're listening to this, if the audience is listening to this and they're struggling with that, kind of stuck in the grit mode, and they haven't realized that there's these intrinsic drivers that they kind of need to be thinking about, does that tie into the heart, the mind, the body, and spirit kind of model that you have?
Yeah, of course. So I'll speak to it at a high level, assuming not everybody's was at,
Yeah.
and so I'll just give the high level. So the mind, body, heart, spirit, if you've gone to a yoga studio, you've heard mind, body, heart, spirit, right? Maybe
Yes.
there's different words for it, but the four directions come from North American and South American indigenous tribes. And they represent different elements of life, right? So the seasons, life, birth, death, rebirth being spirit, right? And they represent elements of our own humanity, right? So we have the logical brain, we have the mind that protects us, that helps us be good strategists, get to the numbers goals,
Gotcha.
figure out what those things are. The body, which I just spoke to, right, which is the thing a lot of people ignore. We always say the body tells the truth. Like when you have a panic attack on live air,
Yeah.
there's
Is it?
no pretending that didn't happen, right? So the body is the place where we get information. We just need to learn how. Um, the heart is, when we talk about um, bringing your whole self to work, a lot of times people think that they shouldn't bring their emotions to work, or flip side, they bring all of their emotions to work and then they have no boundaries in the environment of work
Of,
context, but that's where words like empath come in, and the ability to actually see where the other person's experience really is, to be able to look at someone and go, hey, what's actually going on with you,
yeah.
something deeper there. And then spirit, you can replace spirit with intuition, with trust, faith, God, whatever version of that you want. But that's the place where um, mind logic doesn't really need to exist, right? Things just make sense. There's a place where you don't worry when you're in spirit. You trust, right?
Yeah.
There's a one of my favorite sayings is like, I know that I know that I know that I know, right? How do I know? I'm not going A leads to B leads to C leads to D. There's just something when you fall in love with somebody and it makes no sense. You just
Yeah.
know that you know that and that's no pun intended. And that's spirit. So the four directions help us remember that we're full humans and we have all these different elements of ourselves at our disposal. I like to tell people that when you realize you have the mind, or you realize you have the heart, the spirit, and the body, all of a sudden you've like gained an executive team you didn't know you had.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
All of a sudden you've got more members on your team than the lauded Western version of how one shows up, which is through the mind. And so that's a way of navigating yourself, right?
Yeah.
Intrinsic drivers, back to your question, we need to ask those questions not just from what we think we know should be true. A lot of our shoulds live here, right? But what does our heart actually want? Right? Or maybe I wake up in the morning as a business owner and I'm like feeling guilty that I need to grind, but I haven't examined in the heart where that guilt is actually coming from. Maybe that guilt is old, maybe that guilt is misplaced. There's a term we use, we call them injected drivers. So life putting things on us, right? Feeling like we should have guilt or we should have a better work ethic than we
Okay.
do, you
Yeah.
know. So the heart helps us examine those things because we don't always know what we want if we have guilt and shame and other people's inquiries in the way. And then the mind is trying to logic our way into meeting those standards, right? And so when we go through it, there's just different ways to navigate yourself to grow and find how to unlock the plateaus.
And the trick here is actually to take the time to go deeper, to listen to the body. I mean, I think another great example of that was, I think, Chip Conley, was it Chip Conley from Joie de Vie, who actually spoke at Small Giants, I think on the second, at our second conference in San Francisco. Heart attack on stage, dropped dead, was dead for a period of time. His father was in the audience at the time. They managed to resuscitate him, but it was just that they hadn't listened to the body. And ultimately, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So we need to be listening. We need to be going deeper. We need to be kind of asking questions.
Yes.
Why is it that I feel guilty? What is my body telling me?
Yeah.
And that's kind of before you land up going through a transition that's really bad,
Right.
use those as signals
Yeah.
that it's time to change, to transition, to do
Yeah.
something differently, right? And it,
Absolutely. And to also do a little, one of my favorite questions in the set of drivers work when we ask, it's like a set of 10 questions. One of my favorite questions is how much progress have you made? To look
yeah,
backwards, right? To give
yeah,
yourself some credit because if there's guilt or if there's a should in there, you're often overlooking the work you have done and what progress you have made, right? Because if you're grinding towards something out in the future, then you're not taking pause again to slow down, to really go a little deeper, to ask the harder questions. You're not pausing to also give yourself any credit, you know?
you should measure your success against kind of what you've managed to achieve, those small achievements that you've made along the way, right? Not,
Of course, it's
yeah,
it's easier to be easier on yourself when you think you've done a good job,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, we were talking as well before we started, how kind of knowing how much you can hold as leaders is so important. Having boundaries, and instead of just kind of stretching until you break. And
Yeah.
it's listening to those signals.
Yeah, I mean, nervous system capacity in general, the ability to know, okay, I think it's Mel Robbins. I could be wrong, but I think it's Mel Robbins. She talks about when she comes home to her partner, or whoever comes home second, kind of does a check-in and says, "Hey, I'm at 90%. Where are you at?"
Yes, I remember. Yeah,
Right? That's capacity. We don't do that very much throughout the day because we're going. We have meetings and we don't put in pauses and whatever the thing is. But the ability to stop and check in to say, I'm at 15%. And you know what? That is very likely going to show to my team. And that's what I'm going to be modeling to my team, right? Versus going, let's be honest, the body tells the truth. I'm at 15%. I'm going to need some help today. What a different environment to create culturally, right? That's the kind of thing I mean when I say capacity. It's where are you at? What can you actually not just hold, but hold and be in integrity with yourself? Show up the way you want to show up.
yeah.
Show up the way your team deserves. Show up the way you deserve. Show up the way your business actually deserves, right? what decisions are you going to make at 15 versus at 85?
But you've got to be vulnerable, right, Mary, to be able to actually to say that. I mean, to be able to walk in and say, "Hey, team, battery's at 15% today." I mean, nowadays you've got these wearables. I was just thinking, this thing tells me what my body battery is. I know my partner walks around and she's body battery's down to 10%.
Literally.
You,
That's kind of what we're talking about.
as leaders, we need to be vulnerable. We need to be able to do that. We need to be able to stand in front of the team and say, "Hey, I'm at 15% today. I really need everybody to kind of rise up and help me." Right?
Right. And so that goes into a really good example of a plateau, right? Where if a person believes that their version of being a leader is never showing weakness, or if the person believes that it's their responsibility to hold the weight of the problems of the business on their shoulders, they're not going to leave any space to be vulnerable, which is a plateau for them and it's a plateau for their business. Learning how to recognize that to say, okay,
Yeah.
it's how do we create more capacity by checking in with ourselves, mind, body, heart, spirit, drivers, whatever it might be, so that actually we can grow and expand. It's a very constricting thing to feel like you have to do it alone, feel like you have to hold the weight of the world. It's very insular, right? Of an experience. It's not expansive.
I'm curious about how many of the leaders who come to you are actually at the stage where they kind of feeling that they've stretched to that break point almost, or they appear fine on the outside, but
Yeah.
I mean, is that kind of common that a lot of the leaders who get to you have actually got to that point, or are, are leaders realizing it way before?
they, so those two versions of person that I mentioned, like the person who's really feeling a pain in the business, something that's creating friction, versus the person that's feeling like there's something within themselves that is wanting or craving for more, right? They fall in my audience and the people that we work with, they fall in one of those two categories. So there are people who come to me and they're like, it's all going to fall apart. Like I'm gonna all the marbles are gonna fall on the floor and I need
Yeah,
some help, right? And that is it's the like it's hanging it's beating you over the head and you're finally listening approach. And yes, I would say half the people are there. The other half, I think, because we do have podcasts and we do have personal development is not what it was 20 years ago, which was super, super cliche. We have small giants, we have these
yeah,
things. People know and they've had some exposure to, you know what? Like, there's just something more for me here, right? I'm not completely at a stage of burnout. I can see myself getting there, but I'm not there because I can tell there's like something for me to seek or move towards. And so I see both, I see both. It depends. I see a lot of sort of my ex corporate friends kind of fall in the first bucket. It's a little bit of a generalization, but I do see that, when there's sort of that place of like, I've sold my time for way too long,
yeah.
I wasn't tempted to say soul, but I said time. There's definitely more of that there, but it's both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, just sort of kind of following on with that a little bit, I guess. I know I think you talked at the conference about the scrapes and the bruises that we bring from our childhood, right? And the things that happen.
Yeah.
I've always, and I'm curious about this. I've always felt like I had a pretty good kind of upbringing, and there weren't many scrapes or bruises that I carried along. I think the question or something I'm curious about is: do a lot of
Yeah.
us miss stuff that is it really simple stuff that we've just missed
Yes.
from the past, and we think we're immune to this stuff?
Yes. So I would say that across both audiences, most people will not know some of those trauma points. Trauma, whether you're sort of on the edge of burnout in the business or at your corporate gig, or whether you're like, I want more,
Yeah,
either way, our blind spots come from the places where we haven't explored our limits, and our limits come from trauma points, right? And trauma is kind of a scary word. People think of really bad things that happen to people in back alleys, and that's
Yeah.
trauma. And if you don't have that, then you should be good, you know? But trauma doesn't have to be big. I define trauma, this comes from one of my teachers, as any place we don't have full choice. Okay.
Got,
So
yeah.
any place that our psyche, our mind is limited to seeing greater possibility. Usually that comes from our family systems, our generational upbringing, whether you grew up in a very sort of limited cultural context versus, like I grew up in New York. Everybody's uniquely, it's a melting pot. What if you didn't grow up in a melting pot? So
Yeah.
when we don't have the ability to see another possibility, there's usually a trauma point. When I, as an entrepreneur, don't know what else is possible except doing it on my own, or except getting to the point of absolute exhaustion and heart attack on stage, if I can't see another way, right? And by
That's
see, I don't mean just see, like I know logically with my mind it's available to me, but I mean actually see in a way that's available to me. It works for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me. That's another big one that entrepreneurs sometimes have, is this like, well, uh, that's nice for somebody else, but I can't do that. It's I'm too unique. Our business is too whatever.
typical. Yeah. Yeah.
Very typical. This like, well, it works for everybody else, right? Those places where you can't choose, you don't know how to choose differently, those are trauma points. And that's what a lot of work around blind spots and, finding the next layer of growth is really about, right? It's okay, what are those limits that have been set because of your life experience that we want to break apart? If you asked the person next to you sitting at the conference, would they be able to take a different action, right? That's how you work through blind spots. It's finding those places where you don't have full access to possibility.
I suppose the interesting part of this, I mean, thinking, going back to myself again, again, growing up in with a family where my father worked a lot, so that kind of work ethic is in my mind. But one of the things that I missed as part of the childhood was spending time together. And I think we've got to be conscious of this as entrepreneurs, that we may be creating the same trauma for the
Yes.
next for our children. Like we, those traumas were places where we didn't have choice. I guess going back
Yeah.
to the way you defined it is really interesting. I really like the way you define it, is that we as children maybe didn't have a choice in those things. So that's the version of trauma. We carry that through as adults, but then we don't realize that we're doing it to our kids, I guess.
Well, right. And you know, I like what you said about working really hard, and the sort of downside is we didn't spend enough time. The reason I say I like it, even though it doesn't sound like it was all that great in the moment, but I like that because it's an example where it wasn't malicious,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't anything that was intentionally done to harm, right? And I have this conversation a lot with business owners. Business owners don't like to feel like they are a victim to anything, that they're at the effect of somebody else's, behaviors. A lot of business owners don't like that. And so seeing an example of like, yeah, that was the context of the time, and
Yeah.
working hard was revered, right? And so of course part of the downside is that, we didn't spend time together. There's nothing
Yeah.
malicious about that. There's not anything to shame or guilt anyone for. It's just the way that things were shaped, right? And that brings guilt and resentment and shame, and we don't want to dishonor our families or whatever it might be. It takes it all off the table and just says, this is what happened. This was the context. Now we have a different context, right? So
Yeah.
how do we move from that? I'll share a personal example if it would be helpful
Yeah.
too.
Sure. Definitely.
The one that I grew up with was, um it's hard work to get out from where we started. Like we immigrated, you leave everything behind. I shared this, my
Yeah.
grandpa was a Holocaust survivor. We came here with $250 to our name, all of that. It took a lot of hard work to get out of that. A lot. My dad once walked to Manhattan instead of paying 250 for the subway, right? It was hard work,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
I grew up like, yeah, you have to work really, 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 really hard. It's actually just part of how life is, right?
and don't be reliant on the system, I think was one of the things that your family wanted to escape being reliant on the system, I guess.
Yeah, they did not want to stay on government assistance for very long, all that stuff. And I admire all of
Yeah.
that. Like, I talk about it all the time. It like means a lot to me. And it was not really available for things to be easy. Like the flip side of that, how, right? How do you actually find ease in your environment? How do you find ease in your business? And so a lot of what I've embraced is this contemplation of ease, right? Um, what does generosity actually feel like for me? How do I show generosity today versus when I get there, wherever there is, which may never happen, right? Generosity is a flow, isn't there's an ease to it. So I've just explored generosity. And so I'm in this interesting and have been in this interesting exploration of like, so how do I learn ease? It's not because there's some resentment that I'm holding on to. It's just it wasn't really around. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't
It
it
wasn't
just
it wasn't an option, right?
that
Yeah.
much of an option for me. And my everybody loved each other. There's right back to your point, like it's not these massive life traumas. Those exist too, and we work through them, just to be clear. But most people have these little places where it's just like, I didn't even consider that ease was an option. I didn't consider that I could ask for help and not have to do it alone. Like it wasn't modeled. And so
Yeah.
that's where things get really fun because when you actually go, oh, there's this whole other ecosystem that I don't have available to me. I'm not in choice. I don't know how to get there, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes a game. Then it's really,
How do
really,
we figure this out? How do we get there?
it's where, things get fun. That's the game of entrepreneurship. It's the
Yeah.
game of personal development.
I think to some of the things you've said along the way, like you you arrive, immigrant family, escape the system, the reliance on the support from the system, and then your mom says to you, "Don't work for in the corporate world." Kind of, you
Yeah.
don't think so? Escape the kind of
Yeah.
corporate world, and as you said, you learned a lot, and you got a lot out of IBM, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
Now you create your own thing, and you're about kind of helping people find their purpose to do their thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I yeah, there was something that you said as well that was I really loved. I sort of thought if you've got kind of closing question, but
Yeah.
I love how you talked about coming back to ourselves, coming home.
Hmm.
I was wondering if you talk a little bit more about that. I'm curious what that means, and
Yeah.
how, coming back to ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah. So we can talk about it a couple different ways. You can see the thread to home in my story,
Yeah,
right? Which is why it feels true to talk about. The mind, body, heart, spirit, the navigation of self, coming home is your center, right? If they are on a wheel, then home is the center. And home is a connective feeling, a connective experience with what is true for you, intrinsic, right? Back to the drivers. It's true for you and you're not questioning it. It's kind of like bringing the whole wheel inside, right?
yeah,
And the reason it's so important is at the end of the day, there are 100 million right answers. It's not like we're going to get it wrong, right? We're going to make mistakes along the way, but there are all these people's opinions and ways of doing business, of doing life. The one that's right is the one that's true for you,
mm,
one that
yeah,
resonates the most. It's the one that feels like yours, you know? It's like falling in love with somebody, the person feels like home,
yeah,
right? It's that. It's learning every time you realize whoa, I didn't have ease available. I didn't have support available. I didn't have that connective time available. Every single time you find these like places that complete a part of your puzzle, that's coming back home. That's coming back home. That's coming back home. It's learning the most whole version of who you are, right? And then you make decisions from that place because they're decisions that are yours, right? That will
Yeah.
get you to wherever your path is. It's not anybody else's. It's your path.
I really love that. I mean, for me at the moment, I think, was born in South Africa, grew up in South Africa, spent a lot of time traveling and in the States growing up. But I more recently have felt this kind of pull back to South Africa, spent more time there.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's getting a bit older, but it kind of felt like this pull back to home in a way. Um, and I think that's why it resonated with me so much is there's all these pieces that come together like the puzzle, that's maybe one spending some more time there and just kind of enjoying where I came from. But there are
Yeah.
equally kind of other things that make you feel like you're coming home. And I just love the way you put that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you take the parts that you grew up. I love honoring where I come from. It's like it's one of the things that I think people really appreciate. It's like
Yeah.
honor and take that with you. Don't just throw, it's not all bad. You know, far from it. You can learn from all of it. And so let that be your kind of landing place and then start to go, okay, so where are the parts of myself that like now what do I want to build with it? Purpose built. It's like how do I bring
And
the most whole version into the present moment?
yeah, love that. So this podcast is called The Freedom Experience. So it's all about kind of finding entrepreneurial freedom, this thing that we set off as entrepreneurs to try and find. And I'm curious, Marina, about you and freedom. And what does freedom mean to you?
I I, I kind of just said it and I hope it's
Yeah,
not
I think
definitive, but to me, wholeness is freedom.
love it. Yeah,
Right? Wholeness, the ability to go, there is nothing in my past and nothing in my future that I'm not going to welcome. It's all a part of my experience. It's all a part of who I am. I am here to learn more and more and more of who I am.
it's so beautiful.
And
Yeah,
yeah, they're right. You don't humans and animals are not meant to be put in cages, right? And whenever we are in a place where we can't fully express, we don't feel whole.
yeah,
And so it's
it,
wholeness is freedom to me. And that exists irrespective of place.
yeah, brilliant. Love it. It's
Yeah.
really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us the time and sharing your wisdom with us. And I mean, we'll put everything into show notes. So if folks want to reach out to you and get hold of you, website, LinkedIn, make sure I'll sign up for your bi-weekly newsletter. Looking forward to reading that. Sorry, I haven't done that already, but
Sorry I haven't added you to the list. Thank you so much for having me. This is so nice to go deeper with you.
absolute pleasure. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Freedom Experience. I hope that this episode sparked something for you. If it did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. It really helps for us to get in front of other business owners, other entrepreneurs. So wherever you're watching, whether it's YouTube or on your favorite station, make sure to just give us a review or give us a rating. Really appreciate that. And then if you're curious about the work that we do to help support values-driven leaders and businesses, then head over to smallgiants.org. You'll find some great resources, upcoming virtual workshops, and a whole community of people, of leaders building great companies, not just big ones. And if Marina's message resonated with you, check out her newsletter. I've just finished reading one now. They're fantastic. It's The Pause for Entrepreneurs. And I think it's very thoughtful and a great read. So thank you for tuning in. And that's it for me. See you next time.